And a good afternoon, everybody. It is an edition of Sound Off with Sinkoff.
Yes, it is.
We are here in the Sinkoff Realty Group studios with not only an awesome real estate attorney, but a great friend, Nico Caridi, Esquire. Nico!
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Did you enjoy the tour?
I did. I love your office. Love the aesthetic. Expect nothing less from you.
And
I do want to ask for feedback. I hope you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Well, because I've told Brian in the past that, hey, do I need to bring my own mic?
We've had a couple two-tree mic issues, but we're good now.
Yes, we are.
Nico, why don't you slide back a little bit because you're a hair taller than me. We gotta
a little bit.
Keep the noise down. All right. So again, Brian Sinkoff, broker owner, not an associate broker, broker owner of the Sinkoff Realty Group. Nico Caridi. Nico, how long before we get into this? We're going to talk real estate. We're going to talk real estate law. We're going to talk all sorts of crazy, fun stuff. How long have you been an attorney? Give us your background, if you will.
Absolutely. Let's see now. How long have I been an attorney? So I passed the bar exam in 2012. I attended Albany Law. Before that, I received my bachelor in finance from Roger Williams University. And I happened to be graduating undergrad at a time when there was no jobs in finance. We all remember that period. So I never had any idea I was going to go to law school. About 6 months before I was graduating college, my father suggested take the bar exam. Forgive me, not the bar exam, the LSAT. See how you do.
Yep.
I did. I scored pretty well. I got into a few law schools. So to law school I went straight out of college. Graduated law school, was fortunate enough to pass the bar, and just by a twist of fate, I received my first job with an attorney, Tim Kelleher, well-established real estate attorney, and I just built from there. I can't explain exactly how I got here, but I'm here, and I hope I'm here to stay for a while.
And you've had your own firm.
I have.
And the name of your firm is the
Caridi Payne and Associates.
Yes.
We also are our own title insurance company. Just because we do so much real estate, it makes sense for us to have our own title insurance company. And we started the practice, myself and two other guys, partner in the title company and a paralegal that was with me at the time, back in 2016. And now we are up to about 22 employees between both companies in a little over 6 years.
And you've been a realtor you've been in real estate law for over a decade.
I have.
And
my 14th year, I believe.
And Nico, just to give you a backstory, Nico, all jokes aside, you probably have seen us together on Facebook at games and things of that nature. We're work colleagues. We're also good friends. Nico, when I first got into the business, I want to say this is around 2012 or so. Nico he was hunting for realtors to work with him because he was a newbie, much like me, a young buck, and he reached out to me and
let me interject 1 second.
Yeah, go back.
Quick point on that.
Sure,
okay?
Go back.
So my first job, the offer that I got was, look, we're going to hire you. We're going to give you a marginal salary. We're going to give you 1 year to build enough of your own clients to at least bring in the business needed to cover your salary. So I said, sure. I had no other options. I had been working with that firm all through law school, so I kind of had all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. And they gave me that shot. And so what I started to do was what Brian
reach out. Yeah, he reached out to me on LinkedIn, said he's trying to grow his business. We got coffee at Starbucks.
We did.
I kind of wish you slipped in my DM, as it were.
I did slide in his DMs.
Yeah, you slid there right in my. I
slid in his DMs before sliding in DMs.
Yeah, I don't even know what that means, but this is a family show, so let's just try to keep that in mind.
And that's my beautiful wife.
Is being Amy is getting cute,
Amy.
and she's getting a little crazy with the cheese wheels.
That's right. That's why I like her.
So all jokes aside, one of the reasons, again, we often make jokes, and there's no secret I have a relationship, and we've had Drew Aiello on from Fairway Mortgage here as well, and no secret that we're friends, but the reason I partner and work with guys like Nico and Drew is because beyond the friendship, if they weren't good at what they did and if they weren't good at their job, I wouldn't align myself with them because we are true professionals in this business. And Nico, yes, we joke, we have fun. He's a very good friend, but he's an awesome real estate attorney, and I think that's very important. Him and his staff there, They do a great job. They're
Yes, they do.
attentive. They get back to you. And I think in real estate, especially in real estate and real estate law, communication is a key.
100%. And one thing I know we'll get into a little bit more as we go on here. When you do real estate law to the level that my firm does it, residential, commercial, you have to be systematic and you have to have an amazing staff. They all have to do their part. And I'm fortunate enough to have a wonderful staff. They keep me in line more often, and honestly, they are the heartbeat of the firm because they've helped me create these systems and work efficiently, and that's why we're able to do what we do at the level that we do it. So, to everybody that works for me, you guys are the best.
Yes, I second that. So, Nico, we know I'm a real estate broker.
Yes, you are.
Help people buy and sell homes. You're a real estate attorney. So we're gonna do this brass tacks. We're gonna strip this down. Real estate 101. What on earth do you do as a real estate attorney, and why, when I'm a buyer or a seller in the state of New York, would I want to enlist your services?
As a real estate attorney,
that's a good question, Brian. Then you can answer.
That is a very good question, Brian. Thank you. You are a professional at this, after all. As a real estate attorney, what don't we do really? So in terms of the legal matters themselves, obviously when you're buying real estate, you're signing a contract that has legal implications, financial legal implications, and otherwise. In a lot of ways, we kind of have to act as a sort of consultant. Too, we have to kind of help people, especially new buyers, understand the process. We have to go step by step from beginning to end. But as a real estate attorney, the biggest thing is making sure the client understands what's going on throughout the process, what the contract means, what the contingencies mean. We do things a little bit different here in New York, upstate New York. We go to contract first, subject to inspection contingencies, things like that. Understanding that process is huge. So we over the years, we've developed our own systems and way that we do things, that we make sure that the contract. Another thing I want to mention too, with contracts, language. One of the biggest things we look for as a real estate attorney, whether it's a residential purchase contract or a commercial property contract or a commercial property with an ongoing business contract, language is so important. On the residential side, a lot of the forms are pre-filled, but there is still important things that have to be written in there. Clauses, things in the miscellaneous provisions. So we look to that language to make sure it clearly states and can only be interpreted in a way that our client wants it interpreted. We take them to the contract and we kind of work with them each step of the way. We assist in negotiating if there's inspection issues that come up, things like that.
And it's imperative that, and we deal with this all the time. You and I we're in the sandbox of real estate, right? We're grinding every day. It's kind of like a root canal, right? You may get a root canal once every 3 years. That person, the periodontist, I think the name of that is.
That was impressive.
They're doing root canals every day, and it's similar with us. People aren't seeing an attorney approval every day. You're seeing multiple of those a day, and it's important that those I's are dotted and T's are crossed. And I think for us, Nico, it's about explaining to our clients, whether me as a buyer or seller from the beginning, and then hand them off to you once the deal is signed, is managing their expectations and explaining things in a layman's, and I don't mean to dumb it down, but we kind of have to,
Yes.
you got to explain it in layman's terms.
Yeah, and sometimes I slip and I'll say something like, I just had this happen to me the other day, something like chain of title, talking to a person that has no idea what a chain of title is. And I even have to catch myself sometimes, but Brian's absolutely right. The management of expectations, and I remember early on in my career, it was so difficult to tell. Sometimes you have to tell people what they don't want to hear, but they need to understand. Early on in my career, you want to do whatever your client's asking, but sometimes you have to tell them the hard truths and make them understand how the process works. Closing dates, I'm sure all real estate professionals out there have had some problem at some point in time with the old contract on or before closing date that comes standard in our contracts. Making sure the clients understand what those things mean. Things of that nature. So yes, and Brian, another thing I will say about you you are excellent in managing clients' expectations. Every dealing I've had with you, your clients come in, by the time they reach me, they already have an understanding of the process because he takes them through it step by step. He follows up regularly. He gives us the information we need that makes our job easier. So, yeah.
And it's important, and whether it's deciding what to make on an offer, or or what to list their home for. I like to tell my clients the absolute truth. Hey, here's what it's going to take in this market to get this house, for you to buy this house because there's competition, or here's what we should list the home for because, the other house across the street is $280,000, but yours is a little smaller and it's not as updated. So is it 280? Just because you could see that home across the street doesn't mean yours is the exact same price. It's, we're maybe not comparing apples to oranges. Nico, I think it's so important, and we see this all the time, and I see this as a real estate agent on the buy and the sell side, is when I have an attorney, and that attorney, and again, we're talking real estate. We're not talking traffic court. We're not talking civil suits or litigation in commercial dealings. But it's so important and so imperative that people get a real estate attorney.
100%. It's important for a number of reasons. So first and foremost, it's not rocket science. I mean, real estate transactions, specifically residential transactions, an attorney can handle them. What I will say is that, like everything else, there's nuances, there's terminology, there's a process and a system to the way closings go. We have, there's local customs, and this is not true. Even in the state of New York, depending on where you are in the state, things are just done differently. If I went and did a closing out in Buffalo, they're going to do it a different way.
Exactly.
Than I'm used to.
Exactly.
So having an attorney that understands those systems, understands local custom and practices, and also has an understanding of the language and the way that the contract works and how it affects your rights as the parties to the contract is also important.
And again, it's not to, I imagine for you, you wouldn't probably feel comfortable being a divorce attorney.
Absolutely not.
Exactly.
That's a great example.
Right.
I would be very uncomfortable
Right.
being a divorce attorney.
And it would be, and I equate that, and it's not to knock a divorce attorney because they're doing an awesome service in what they do, but that is probably not the person I'd want handling my real estate transaction. Just like, honestly, Nico's not the guy for a divorce attorney. So again, I think one of the things about Nico and I, and I know that the people I work with, is we tell you the way it is. We stay in our lane.
We do.
And we are the professionals. We do this for a living every single day. Nico, what's the most important thing you look for as an attorney in a contract when you get that contract? So how this typically works, Amy had a good point. She said, sort of give us step by step. Okay, so buyer and me and the buyers are looking at a house. We decide to make an offer. We get our offer accepted. The listing agent and their clients, they sign the contract. We hand it to Nico. Nico, here is a fully executed contract. At that point, Nico does the attorney approval. You touched on that a little bit.
Yeah.
And then the deal, we send that off to the loan officer, and the deal gets going. We get inspections. But from your perspective, Nico, explain like that process of what you're looking for in a real estate contract. What are some red flags? What are things you're seeing
Absolutely.
when you first get that contract from me at the Sinkoff Realty Group?
Okay, so I'm going to focus mostly on residential contracts once more.
Right.
So as you mentioned, and I'll say this because I said before, we do things a little bit differently around here. The agents are responsible for putting what I like to say is 90% of the contract together. There's a standard form that every real estate agent in this area knows from the MLS that is filled out by the agent. A lot of the language is pre-canned, but there is sections you have to fill out,
yes.
Obviously. And then it comes to us as the attorneys where we can review it and add an addendum to that called an attorney approval letter, where we can modify language, we can We can add language. We can remove language.
Dot the I's, cross the T's.
Right. And the reason language is so important, yes,
Dot
correct.
the I's, okay.
You got it, buddy.
Yeah.
And why you threw me off my chain of thought, though. But
why that's so important?
Why that's
attorney
so
approval,
important?
Yes.
Language. Language is the most important thing in a contract. It has to be clear. There cannot be room for interpretation. So in the beginning phase, the first thing I'm looking for is to make sure, one, that the agent that you guys filled out in your part of it correctly. Number two, I speak to the client to find out if there's any nuances or little things that may not be reflected in the contract, or if there already is such things, I look to the language. If I have to modify it to make it clear, I do, and that's the biggest thing.
And an example of that might be in a real estate transaction. I'm just going to give you an example. I represent the buyers. There's a giant old yacht or sailboat in the backyard that hadn't been used since the Clinton II administration, right? And it's rotting, and it's going to take a truck and a couple 2-tree guys or gals to get rid of it with equipment, and me and you ain't lifting the thing up and getting it, hauling it to the dumpster.
Right.
So you would think the buyer's agent would put in there, all items removed, and by the way, we want the sailboat in the backyard removed prior to closing at the seller's expense. But if that's not in there, and the buyers, right, say to you, hey, Nico, we're a little concerned about the sailboat in the backyard, the giant pool table that's rotted in the basement. Those are things you can tweak and buff in the attorney approval.
Absolutely. Those are things that I can add to the attorney approval. I think more along the lines of what I was saying is, let's say we get a contract that says property to be broom swept clean. Okay, well, what does property mean? Is it the house? Is it the garage and sheds?
Right,
is
the
it
porch,
the exterior grounds? So if I'm representing a buyer and I want to ensure that home's going to be empty, reasonably clean, I will modify that language or make sure to state it as clearly as possible, so there's no room for interpretation. What's the word I'm looking for? Ambiguity in contracts is a good thing to remember. Ambiguity in contracts generally work to the favor of the non-drafting party. So if you're a buyer, that would mean your seller. It's working to the favor of your seller. So clarity, it's key, okay? The other thing, too, getting back to what else I look for as a real estate attorney, and I won't get too into this because it's not an overly exciting topic, but title. The chain of title, examining the chain of title for a piece of property is so important. If you buy a home and there's a title issue that was not resolved, and then you go to sell or you go to refinance, and that issue was missed by your attorney because maybe he didn't know what he was looking for, it can be catastrophic. It can cost you money. So examining the chain of title, language in contracts, and clarity language.
And chain of title, just so we make that clear.
See, I did it again.
See, Real Estate 101. It's who's owned that property over the years, right?
Every piece of property at the records division of the county clerk's office, there is literally a drawer. Most of it's digital now, that has every deed, every easement, everything that's affected a piece of property, residential or otherwise, throughout, as long as they keep records. Generally, we only look back for a period of about 40 years. But yeah, that is what is referred to as a chain of title. That's where we would find liens that weren't properly discharged, if there was any breaks in the chain of title. So there was a deed from person A to person B, but then the next deed came from person C. Well, what happened to the deed from person B to C? Right. Things like that. So we have to make sure that the chain of title is not broken, that there's not liens or other issues that could affect your ownership.
Good stuff. All right. So as a real estate attorney, you're doing, I don't want to say all the legwork, but a lot of the legwork is in the beginning on, in terms of that attorney approval. But most of the hurdles, I was going to ask where you find most of the hurdles in getting a real estate transaction, and then, from the time you get it to the closing table. I would say a lot of those hurdles, right, come in inspection issues. Inspection
issues, absolutely. Inspection issues, or if there's poor communication from one of the parties to the transaction, be it the other attorney, the listing agent, poor communication, issues arising during inspections, which is why it's important, because we work with a lot of agents. We work with a lot of great agents, but it's important to work with an agent that's really going to explain the inspection process to you. Brian, have you ever seen an inspection report that came back crystal clean?
Even in new construction, I've never seen a house that doesn't have something.
Right.
Ever.
Maintenance recommendations,
Ever.
safety, I don't know, whatever it may be. There's no such thing as a clean inspection report. So managing expectations on the front end, open communication is how to avoid some of these hurdles, and reasonableness. I'd say the biggest problem I have on the residential end is if there's conflict between the buyer and seller. For some reason or another, you wouldn't think it. It's a real estate deal. Everybody's interest should generally be aligned in the end goal. Doesn't always happen.
Right. My line is, it ain't the OJ trial.
No,
you know what I'm saying? It's
no,
not.
that's
It's a joke.
And actually, I'll add a point going back to the importance of having a real estate attorney versus, say, a criminal defense attorney or a civil litigator, is that they just approach things in a different way.
And they literally treat it like a civil case or the OJ trial, because they rarely, and we're talking about non-real estate attorneys, not all, but majority, they rarely include the realtors in communication.
Oh, yeah.
Because they look at us as like a third party in a civil case where we're not involved. Meanwhile, like, okay, you've agreed upon giving credit for X, but me as the realtor, I'm supposed to relay that to the client. Obviously, the lawyer would too. But again, the more you know, the better. And what we're looking for in an inspection, everybody, we sound smart. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mom.
Mrs. Caridi. The more you know, the better. And in an inspection, it's the inspector's looking for any major material defects costing over $1,500 to replace, repair, fix. Not limited to mold is pass-fail, wood-destroying insects are pass-fail, as is mold, wood-destroying insects, and radon. Those are all pass-fail. So we're looking at those things. So, you had septic as well, and then a well, if the property has that. But so like a roof, if the roof is leaking, and again, this is a conversation I have with every single seller and every single buyer, Nico, and we'll talk how you approach it. If the roof is leaking, right? If it's leaking drastically, it's pretty much a no-brainer. It's got to be handled. But if a roof has a small leak and the shingles are old, and the inspector says it's the end of its useful life, that's always a really tough term to deal with, right? Because you don't know which way that can go.
It goes back to ambiguity.
Yeah.
What could it mean?
What does it mean? So the seller is like, well, I'm not putting a new roof on. I'm going to live in this property for 30 more days till my closing. This buyer's going to be living here for quote unquote 30 years. I'm not giving them credit for a roof. The buyer is saying, I'm not moving into a house with the potential roof leak. So is there a common ground? What I say to a seller is, well, your roof's been called out, so guess what? Now it's going to be called out if we go back on the market. We have to disclose that because it was a material defect. So those are the types of things we're dealing with. It's not so cut and dry, right?
No.
It's emotions, it's dollars, it's time, it's effort.
Especially when inspection issues come up, some sellers, every transaction is different. If both parties act reasonable and don't have emotional investment, which is very hard, especially for sellers, and understandably so in many cases. But if you keep your eye on the prize and you don't take things the wrong way, so if a buyer, something comes up in the inspections, Brian's representing the buyer, he approaches your agent about a credit for whatever it might be, mold remediation, something of that nature. Some sellers take it personally and feel like you're insulting, their home, and it makes them less likely to treat it as a business transaction, which ultimately it is, and really it's in the best interest of all parties in any business transaction to see that thing through to conclusion, because one party gets paid, one party gets the home, and everybody's happy. But sometimes personal feelings overly personal investment can impede the goal, which should be smooth sales all the way through closing.
Your beautiful bride Amy is watching. She says she likes a good leach field situation. There's nothing wrong with a good couple two-tree
joke with an old friend of ours.
Couple two-tree leaches.
He tried to tell us that leach field is better than public sewer, and he and I got into a heated debate about this.
Yeah, it's Some people swear by leach fields.
Not for me.
No, not for me. I'm a suburban boy. I grew up in the DC area. I didn't even know what the hell a septic was until I got. I mean, I didn't know what it was till I got into real estate.
Although, have you ever shared your story about the nightmare in the case of the buried septic?
Oh, my house?
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you that. All right, so we're gonna get into some funny. We got to be a little careful here. We're getting into some generic funny stories. All right, so we're closing on my home. This is March 3rd of 2015. We're closing on my lovely home in Slingerlands. You've seen many of my Facebook Lives or pictures inside my home. Closing on the home. We are actually going through we had just finished the walkthrough, Francine and I. Zach was in school. He was probably in first grade. Nico calls me and goes, Brian. The owner, by the way, she had already moved to North Carolina.
Correct.
She was never even there the whole time.
Correct.
The house was on the market. Nico says to me, Brian, we have a real problem. I said, what? I'm like, and we were selling our house at the same time. It was back in the day where you could do both in one day.
Correct.
Right. Brian, we
could still do that.
Ish. Yeah. Brian, we have a real problem. I said, well, what do you mean? We just found out the seller had an epiphany in the middle of the night, and she remembered that there's a buried septic tank in your backyard. Now, I'm on city water and sewer, but Slingerland's probably 50 years ago. Right. It was everything was septic back then, except if you lived in Albany or Schenectady or Troy. Most everything was septic.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't have the sewage and the manpower to get that done. So we have a buried septic tank in our backyard that we found out on game day.
Yeah, she had a nightmare about it.
She had a nightmare, an epiphany in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
The property disclosure that she filled out asking if there was any buried septic tank, yes or no. That she never had an epiphany and didn't know. It was
what triggered that.
It was the night guilt, perhaps.
Yeah, exactly.
So. And this is like, I think one of the
non-decommissioned. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
It was decommissioned. I mean, it was not in use.
It?
Yeah,
no,
it was
wasn't
not
in use, but it was still a full.
It was there.
It had organic matter.
Well, I mean, I think it was filled. They didn't. I mean, my guess is my neighborhood's probably had city sewer for 30 years.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
So it's not like. If it was an oil tank, we would have not had the closing. We would have been digging that up and pulling it out because that could be, oil in the yard. But so again, it was a nightmare that I had. And was I a hot mess?
You are. I don't know if you guys know this about Brian, but he can get a little wound tight sometimes.
You think?
That's why we love him. But no, you handled it well. We had a lot of hurdles doing what we did for both of those closings.
Yes.
And you handled it well. You were a good client.
There was we had another thing going on with the sales side with checks and all that. We're not going to get into that at this moment. But any sort of, I know you do. How many closings a year do you do, Nico? Oh, don't brag, but brag.
No, yeah. It depends. I mean, we were in the period, I always call it post-COVID, in real estate for those first couple, 2 or 3 years.
Couple 2 trees.
We were doing an incredible amount of closings. It was great. It was awesome. It was chaotic, but we got through it. A year, I probably averaged 25 to 30 a week between residential, sale, and bank files.
So running that math, that's like 100.
That's what we live by. Always be ABC, always be closing.
Who's Brian?
It's a friend of mine from my hometown.
All right. From where? Catskill?
Catskill, New York.
Catskill Game
born
Farm?
And raised.
Were you ever at the Catskill Game Farm?
Come on.
Did you love that place?
Of course.
Did you think back at the time, this is a little weird, that there's wild game?
I'm going to do this to people and it's going to be in their head for the rest of the day.
Go ahead.
Adventure at Catskill Game Farm. Adventure is in our nature.
Did you find it weird, though, back then at that place, at the Catskill Game Farm?
Why would I find it weird?
Well, I mean, just like,
it was my wife would say it was wonderful and whimsical.
Yeah, it was nature. Look, we go on Adirondack Animal Land.
Was it weird to see lions?
Yes,
in
right.
New York. Yeah,
weird lions just hanging around, couple 2 trees.
No, but it was fun. As a kid, that place was the best.
Have you ever gone to the Adirondack Animal Land?
No.
You need to take.
I was from the Catskill Mountains.
But you need to no. You need to take the kids.
No,
by that I mean Amy. You need to take Amy to the Adirondack Animal Land.
She'd love
Dude,
it.
that place it's kind of like.
She's getting fired up.
It's kind of like.
She loves feeding goats. Sorry.
Yeah. Hey, let's keep that maybe off Facebook, Amy.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's inside. Couple 2 tree inside jokes. I don't even remember what the hell I was saying. What were we just talking about?
Fun doing
Yeah,
it,
we
though.
were talking about your closings. Okay, so you do about 1,200 closings a year.
Yeah.
Roughly 1,000, 1,200. That's a lot.
Residential,
That's a lot of residential closings.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate.
Some funny stories, some crazy things you've seen that you can talk about.
Funny?
Yeah, or just
I'd have to work crazy. I have more than I.
yeah.
can
I mean, can you give me an old crazy story? Maybe that passed the statute of limitations.
The first closing I ever did, I had the first closing I ever covered on my own. I was covering it for a partner at the firm that I used to be at. It was a divorce situation.
That's probably fun. Said
Yeah.
no one ever.
It went surprisingly well until the end. An argument broke out between the former ex-spouses, and the ex-wife picked up a stapler and just hucked it full speed. She had torque in the throw at the husband's head. It zipped by him, hit the wall. It was a whole thing.
Did he duck, or she just had bad aim?
She had. It was a little combination of both. He had a little slip, and she kind of pulled it a little bit to the left.
So could you imagine if that hit him?
It would have been really bad.
Well, then you would have been getting a different. What a great say. We call this callback in the industry. You would probably be getting a different kind of attorney at that point, right? They wouldn't be using the real estate attorney.
No, exactly right.
Right.
She would have needed a criminal defense attorney if she made contact. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. See, that's just classic callback, kids.
Yeah. So let me think. There was that one. That was baptism by fire for sure.
You've had a couple.
You and I have had some interesting ones. The old pitcher of water in the
What?
The incident, the walkthrough incident that resulted in me almost getting my nose broken by a slammed door.
Oh yes.
What was it? That was.
That was no. That was. I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was. Oh my gosh! I know exactly what it was. It was a closet. It was a walkthrough. We represented the sellers. It was a walkthrough. Okay, and the buyers walked through. And I'm talking like a small, not a coat closet. I'm talking about a small, imagine a bedroom with a small closet in it. Not a huge, an old, 1800s, I think it was like a 1900s home, tiny closet. There was like 3 trash bags, literally of clothes, two traffic cones, and like 3 coats. That was it. Mm-hmm. The buyers wanted like $2,000 credit for cleaning. Do you remember this?
I do. I mean, it was a few bags of stuff.
It was literally.
Wasn't it already bagged? Wasn't it
Nico,
already?
it wasn't like I had to pack a closet and get the stuff out of there. It was literally. It might have been 4 trash bags,
right.
3 winter coats,
right.
and 3 traffic cones.
One trip
It would have been literally. It would have taken me 15 minutes to load that in my car, and I would have loaded it all, and it wouldn't have been an issue. So they refused. The buyers refused to close. They wanted credit.
It's not to downplay it, because it technically should have been empty.
Yes.
The home should have been empty. Should have been broom clean. It was the reaction that we got. Because what did you say? If they wanted, it was a couple thousand. It was like
$1,500.
They wanted some unreasonable credit.
It wasn't like $150 or whatever.
No,
or how about
it was an unreasonable credit, and they just dug their heels in the sand and refused to close, which left us in a spot where we could either not close and potentially sue, which is rarely worth it with residential contracts because of the expense involved and the time, the uncertainty. So it was a weird spot to be in, but the reaction from all the parties involved, not even just the buyers, the agent they were working with was irate. It was one of those
slammed the door in your face multiple times.
Twice.
Yes.
Then when I tried to open it slowly again, it was pushed back again. And
it was. It was, here was the one, Nico had said earlier about solutions to inspection issues or any issues. We're human beings, we can get through it. This isn't the OJ trial. What I always say is cooler heads will prevail. We're dealing with people. So if they would have said, hey, there's some items left in the closet in the second bedroom, I would have left the closing and gotten them out of there. I knowing what it was, that they took a picture of it. I'm like, are you kidding me? And again, it just wasn't handled right. So we actually postponed the closing. We got the stuff out of the closet. We ended up closing the next day. I think cooler heads just have to prevail in that situation. And, at the end of the day, it was laughable when you look back on it.
It was, and it's one of 100 other stories like that. There's most closings generally go fine. Everybody does their part. And they're fine, but man, some of the things you see at these closings, if you do enough of them, it's something.
Yeah. I've had closings. Where actually 2 in the last year. One was 2022. One was 2023. Where the furnace, you may remember this. The furnace was it was the dehumidifier was clogged, and there was literally just water. It was like you turn on a faucet. Water was just coming from the dehumidifier on the back of the furnace. Remember that was a Slingerland's house. There was that one, and then there was the other one, which was this past summer, where we went in and the sump pump, the hose went across the room into the drain, right? Well, the hose had come up from the drain across the room. So the water was just pumping out onto the ground, back in it. So it was just a never-ending circle. There was this much water remember that? Yeah. This much water on the closing day, as the closing was. So actually,
fun call to get.
Yeah, that was. Those are nightmares. But that's why it's so important to do a walkthrough and I tell people this, you got to do a walkthrough on the day of the closing. Can we do it the night before? No, because if the hot water heater breaks, you're not going to know about that, especially as we get into the winter months. You're not going to know about that until you're already in the house, right?
Absolutely. It's hugely important to do it at the last possible time that you can while still getting to the closing, just because you want to make sure everything's out, that there's nothing concealed by furniture, areas you can't see. I can't tell you how many times there's a few items left, larger items, and at the time of walkthrough, and they say, oh, it's okay. They'll have them out by closing, and then after closing, they go back, or worse, and there's a gigantic hole in the wall behind the couch. Oh. I had one recently where the baseboard heater came forward. Luckily, it was discovered at the walkthrough, but the base behind, there was a way to move the baseboard. And behind it was just covered in black mold.
On the main level.
On the main level,
which was probably
did
real.
I show you the photo of that?
No, but you told me about it,
and an inch and a half thick.
And I said to you, there's probably a real problem, because if it's on the main level, what the heck does the basement look like? What's going on in those basement walls?
Right.
What's really happening?
Fortunately, that was a client that was she had experience with as being a contractor
and was renovating it. Yeah, so they were taking the walls down anyway.
So we ended up making that one.
Brian G asked, can you sell a house with everything still in it? I can answer it from the real estate perspective. Would you like me to do that? And then maybe you can answer it from the law side.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Real estate perspective, generally speaking, unless you state in the listing that you're going to be selling everything with everything in it, whether it's an estate sale or whether it's just a house that, I don't want to say a flip, but a house that is in disarray, disrepair, and it needs a complete rehab, you can sell it with everything in it. Just keep in mind, doing that is going to probably lower your price, because now someone has to pay and time and money to get that stuff out of there. But generally speaking, on a normal residential transaction, the property needs to be broom swept and all personal items need to be removed prior to closing at that seller's expense.
Yeah, I mean, you're generally right, but there's freedom to contract. So if you want, I've had many transactions, especially with flip properties or distressed sales, where
They have
say
to,
it's
yeah.
as is, what's in, it's in.
Correct.
You can contract however you want. You can put in a contract that a home has to be empty and clean, or you can put in a contract that they can leave the furniture, they can leave whatever they want. So it's really up to you.
And a lot of times, if grandma lived in the house and there's a lot of stuff in there, and the buyers may say, you know what, we're a younger couple, we don't have furniture.
Right.
We'll take grandma's
that
kitchen
happen all the
table.
time.
Why not? We'll take the sofa and we'll figure it out later with what furniture we're going to buy. So yeah, that's an option. Sometimes, and again, if there's a pool table in the basement, maybe the buyers want that.
Exactly.
Maybe they want the usually you can correct me on this, but usually the pool equipment would come with the house, but I would always make sure to ask for it in the contract.
You mean
like the pool cleaner,
again, yes,
yeah,
that's
ask for it.
Especially the things that aren't affixed to the property, like the filter, the pool itself. If it's things like skimmer nets and chemicals, again, making clear that should be included should always be in the contract.
Yeah. We got a couple of other questions.
Come on, guys, lay them on us. Give us.
Yeah, we want to hear some questions. Brian says, this is fascinating. Thank you, Brian. Nico, give us the name of your business again, the name of you.
It is Caridi Payne and Associates. Our website is realestatelawalbany.com. Easy to remember, realestatelawalbany.com.
You have an email?
I do. It's my first. You can make me spell this whole thing out. It's my first. Here, I'm going to write it on here and show it to the camera. It'll just be easy.
Okay, so he's going to give you his email. He's going to give you his phone number. And if you have, obviously, if you have any real estate questions, you're buying or selling, make sure you reach out to me. Certainly, Nico is an awesome resource to get through. Someone said, drop it in the chat. Amy said, I'm an old man, Amy.
Yeah, he's not.
Yeah, I'm writing it out. I'm writing it out on my sticky note, as it were.
Yeah, he does. He still uses sticky notes.
It's in the chat, but there it is.
My block writing, sorry. And Caridi at CaridiLawFirm.com.
Alyssa.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Alyssa said she
she
emailed us.
I do have the best staff, see?
Okay, how much of an area do you guys cover? She said it was backwards. That's true. Because of the camera. All right, thank you.
You're the pro here.
Yeah, and Caridi at CaridiLawFirm.com. It's in the chat. We got some good questions. What kind of area do you cover? That's the number one question. And then somebody else asked, hang on. We're getting some questions.
We are.
What type of area do you cover? And then Bonnie asked, we'll answer Brian's question first. Then Bonnie asked about contingencies. How important are they? So first, where do we cover? I typically cover the entire capital region. I like to say this because I'm a former TV guy. I cover the television market of Albany, New York.
Sure.
So from Lake George to the Catskills, out west to Canajoharie, and then going the other way to
those counties.
Yeah.
Give us with some counties.
Yeah, go ahead.
Albany,
Schenectady,
Rensselaer, Saratoga, Warren, Washington. South, we'll go Columbia, Greene, Schoharie. Go Fulton.
Yeah, I go Fulton.
We'll go Fulton.
I've done Fulton.
Okay. Fulton.
Fonda. Fonda.
You go south of Greene and Columbia, like Ulster,
yeah,
Dutchess.
Columbia. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an Ulster Duchess.
So the price is right. He'll go anywhere.
Have house will travel. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, dog? But yeah, I mean, generally speaking, I'm licensed in New York State, and
most of the greater upstate capital district we cover as well.
And honestly, this is actually it brings up a point here about what I just received in the mail. I just had a client who was buying south of the Catskills, like Red Hook area.
Yeah.
So that's probably about an hour. That's probably an hour and 20 from me, an hour.
Yeah, thereabouts. I actually close in there as well.
So I don't know that market down there, and so I actually had a buyer that was relocating from Florida. What's up, Justin? That's who that is. He's okay to tell him that. He owns a bagel shop down there. So what's up, Justin? But I don't know that market, down in the Red Hook area. It's an hour and 10 minutes from here. I don't know that market, so I referred him to an agent downstate. because I just wasn't comfortable with that, with the real estate down there. I don't know it. I don't have the access to it. I don't really know neighborhoods. So that's the answer to the question. Bonnie's question, man, we're just rocking and rolling. It's Brian Sinkoff, Nico Caridi. Contingencies in the contract, how important are they, Nick?
Extremely important. Again, because we do, so a contingency means it's a condition precedent, not to get too technical.
Don't get crazy with the cheese whiz.
To something happening in the contract. So contingencies protect the buyers in most cases with a residential contract. You have two big ones. You have your inspection contingencies, and then you have your financing contingencies.
Your mortgage.
What those allow, if there are issues discovered during inspections that qualify as what we refer to as substantial or major defects, it gives you the right to cancel the contract without any legal consequence with a return of your deposit if you can't otherwise mutually resolve those issues with the seller, which more often than not we do. But some things, some buyers want more than they're entitled to. Some sellers aren't willing to negotiate how they should, so it doesn't always happen. So a contingency gives you grounds to cancel the contract if that condition precedent is not met. So you can't, the inspections fail, or you are unable to secure your financing despite using good faith efforts to do so. You have two grounds to cancel the contract, get your deposit back,
and again, I'll give you like real quick real world examples for a home inspection. The roof gets called out, it's leaking. You may not see the leak walking through the house, but when the inspector goes in the attic, there's wet. The attic is is completely leaking. The seller doesn't want to give any credit for the roof. That's a major, right? Over $1,500, of course. And the buyer says, I want to cancel. So that would be a contingency. A mortgage example would be, and this is just a simple one, just for purposes of time and anecdotal, if you will, the buyer loses their job. That's happened.
You don't have control over it.
You don't have control over it. It's happened. And one time it happened to me 3 days before the closing. The buyer lost his job.
Changes circumstance.
And he couldn't qualify. That was actually a crazy story. That was 2014, almost 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And the listing agent still wanted to close.
Yeah.
And I was like,
how is that going to happen?
And I said, well, he was, bartending on the side. I was like, the guy just lost his job. Like, right. Can we have a little compassion here?
And beyond that, the bank was not going to have
compassion. No, they're not going to qualify him by his, under the table bartending job, every Tuesday. You know what I mean?
He doesn't claim.
Yeah. What is he going to do? Claim the tips that he?
No, yeah. So things like that. So it's important. Yeah. Those are there to protect the buyers, and just like Brian said, against situations, especially the financing and contingency, against situations you have no control over that could transpire from when you sign your contract to when you're supposed to close. So they give you legal outs.
And those are just really easy, simple examples so you can understand. Right. But man, we out of time.
We are. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, this was great. So I just want to say a couple of things. I want to thank you so much for watching these Facebook Lives here on my Facebook page. And I have some big news. Can I break the news?
Yes, do.
All right. Excited. So many of you know me, right, as a real estate broker owner. But, my previous career was radio, right? I was on the ESPN affiliate here in the Capital Region for many years.
Sinkoff.
That's right. And prior to that, I was on Channel 10. So and now it's going to happen, and I don't have a launch date yet, but I'm going to say early 2024. Sound Off with Sinkoff is back.
Get out of here.
It is back in the form of a podcast.
Oh, good.
Okay.
I can't wait.
We're not going on terrestrial radio.
Got it.
It's going to be thank you, L'chaim. Happy Hanukkah, everybody. We're not going on the radio, terrestrial radio. We're going to be on podcasts, all the podcast formats. We're going to be on Spotify and iTunes and YouTube TV or YouTube and Facebook Live and TikTok. Everywhere we're going to be live. We're going to be there. And I'm going to tell everybody what Sound Off with Sinkoff is going to be. It's going to be real estate. It's going to be sports. It's going to be pop culture. It's going to be whatever the F I want to talk about on that particular day.
Are you still going to allow callers?
Actually, I'm looking in, and you know what's funny? I'm looking into software, like the different I don't know anything about this. Old man, I'm terrestrial radio guy. Put the mic on, pot the mic up. Board up there. I'm on the radio. I don't know how this podcast stuff works, but I am looking into podcast software where I will be able to take calls, and I think that's going to be a must for me. Yeah. Today we would have been talking about Juan Soto of the Yankees. Your thoughts on that? You know this news, right?
No.
Are you serious?
I'm not a big baseball guy.
You're right.
Ask me anything about the Giants.
All right. The news broke.
UFC or golf.
People, I've been talking on Facebook all day about this, and last night it broke about 11. The Padres have traded Juan Soto. He's 25 years old, phenomenal outfielder, to the Yankees. The Yankees gave him some pitchers. They gave him some very good players. Soto is in the final year of his deal. Remember, he rejected a Washington Nationals deal for $400 million before the Nationals ended up shipping him off to San Diego because they knew they couldn't sign him. He rejected a $400 million deal, okay? And then he went to San Diego. He was paired with Machado and Bogarts, and that did not work, okay? It did not. The Padres won freaking 80 games last year, and the Soto experiment in San Diego sucked. It was a terrible chemistry. So now he's on the Yankees. They're probably going to hide him in right field. They're going to move Judge to center. And the
Giancarlo going to be
DH. The guy hadn't played the outfield since the Reagan II administration.
Push one.
Yeah. So the thing is with the Yankees is here's my problem with that trade, and I sounded off on Facebook today. And if you're watching this on Facebook, you can check the earlier post from last night. The problem with Soto is he a 1-year rental? Like, the Yankees are going to have to give him $400 million to keep him because remember he's got one. This is his last year of his deal. Well, they have three mega contracts: Cole, Judge, and Stanton.
Yeah.
So they're going to do another mega deal. Now Soto is a phenomenal hitter and he's young, right? You didn't sign him to like Judge is what 32.
Yeah,
Judge still has and Judge still has a lot more years left on his deal. You're going to be eating those last 3 years of the Judge deal are not going to be great because he's not going to be who he is now.
I'm not.
And he'll never do what he did 2 years ago. He's not going to hit 62 homers. But
is there an equivalent of like guaranteed money?
It's all guaranteed in
the
baseball.
whole thing.
Okay. Not football.
So the only way you could get it off your books is to find a trade partner.
Who then has to, usually if you're trading a big deal like that, you as the trading team have to eat that majority of that money to unload a guy. Yeah. Right? Or the Yankees, because they're the Yankees, they could just tell Alex Rodriguez in his final season to just go away and pay him $25 million to not be part of the team. Most baseball teams, most organizations, most businesses can't afford to pay someone to leave.
Right.
So Soto has a big personality. New York's going to love him. And again, his agent is Scott Boras, guys. He's not going to sign with the Yankees before he's a free agent. You may get him in a year when free agency opens up again, right after this season. But he's not going to, I don't think, he's not going to agree to a deal. He wants a bidding war.
Right.
And he's going to get $400 to $500 million. And can the Yankees, are they going to do that? If they, look, as I said last night on Facebook, it's win now. And if they don't win now and Soto leaves, it's a massive failure. I think if they don't get to the World Series with Soto, it's a massive failure. Last year they didn't even, would they finish fourth in the American League East?
Their offense sputtered.
Was not good.
Which is supposed to be their strength. They still need pitching too.
So not to quiet Nico as we talk about baseball. I mean, we're not talking about Danny DeVito and the Giants.
Well, hey.
Is that your future quarterback, by the way?
Absolutely not.
You don't think Danny DeVito?
No, I think that he could play. I think he's
a good backup.
He should be playing for a backup contract. He's young. He should be relatively inexpensive. He has a long way to go. The guy got cut from Syracuse, didn't he? If I recall.
Yes, he did.
And it's Tommy DeVito. Or,
I know. I'm calling him Danny DeVito.
My daughter likes to call him Olivia Tommy Cutlets. But no, he's not the future. I say let him play out the season, see if he can earn himself a backup contract. I think the Giants are going to be in a very interesting position next year when it comes time to decide if they're drafting quarterback.
A quick sink or swim for you, Neek, and you out there. This is very controversial. Is Tommy DeVito a more legitimate quarterback at this point in time than Daniel Jones?
No. No, he's not. Here's why.
See, I don't think the Giants have been
Daniel
horrendous.
Jones did himself no favors this year, but I have watched every snap.
I'm not a
of
Daniel Jones
career.
fan.
I have watched every snap of his career. I've watched his tape and do. He can play football. The problem is
It's his 5th year.
He's got a ceiling. Let me say it like this: he's got a floor like Sam Darnold. He's got a ceiling like a I don't want to say prime Matt Ryan, but somewhere near his prime Matt Ryan. He does. The problem is the kid has played behind a statistically bottom 5 offensive line in pass protection, run blocking in all 5 years of his career. He's had what 1, 2, 3, 4 coordinators, 4 systems.
I get it.
You want to screw up a young quarterback?
But you know
give him
what?
A bad offensive line and no continuity at coaching.
But Nico, I've watched DeVito, and I don't. Is there a Do I think man to man is Daniel Jones more talented? Absolutely. I don't think that's a debate.
He's bigger. He's got a bigger.
Yeah, that's not a debate. But I watched the offense with DeVito.
Yes, the offense has.
I don't think it's horrendous.
No, the offense as a whole has gotten better, and I won't get crazy here because I could debate this all day.
We will,
but
you don't have to work or anything.
Since Jones has been injured, forgive me. Jones has been injured. We brought in Justin Pugh on the offensive line, who's been great for us. He's a veteran. He was sitting on the couch.
Yeah, he's old.
And Evan Neal, our so-called high-pick right tackle from a couple years ago, who's really been awful, to be frank. He's been replaced by David Tyree. Right tackle's been playing great. So DeVito's he has a better line in front of him. He's got a healthy Saquon, and he's made the most of it. I don't want to diminish what he's done. But we scored 10 points against the Patriots, and we won that game.
And the Patriots are awful.
Yeah, and
they're terrible.
We have 4 wins now.
And you beat us twice.
We beat you. Well, we've owned Washington for years. That's why he doesn't like Daniel Jones, because they're his children.
I don't think Daniel Jones is very good. Look, I want you to keep him forever. I think you should sign him to 2037.
Like I said,
I think he's a great quarterback.
He's a guy that needs. If he was on a good team, he would be a good quarterback. He's not. Unfortunately, he's not on a good team. He's not a guy that's going to. I don't think he's got the ability to elevate. He's not anywhere near Patrick Mahomes or Burrow or guys like that. But you're telling me you put Daniel Jones, all facts the same, on the Niners, that he doesn't have.
Dude, you'd be good on the Niners.
All right, let's not get crazy here. Okay. You put Daniel Jones on the Dallas Cowboys. Is their record that much different?
I think Dak.
And that one was for you, John, if you're watching.
Brian said Giants get more issues than just quarterback. They need more weapons.
Exactly.
Yeah, their weapons suck.
They
have no weapons.
They need offensive
but I mean,
linemen.
how many times have their draft in the last 8 years has been atrocious, dude.
It has.
It's terrible.
Well, I'll say since Joe Shane has taken over, the new GM. I mean, Kayvon Thibodeau is looking. He was on bus watch, but he's at 11.5 sacks.
No, he's good.
Two.
He's a stud.
Our DB there at a
Maryland.
Maryland, you're right.
Yeah,
correct.
my boy.
He's awesome. Banks are closed on Sunday,
yep.
baby, and I love it. Deontay Banks. We've had a couple of misses. Evan Neal. And although I like the center we got this year too, so under Gettleman, our last GM, yes, the drafting was bad.
And Reese.
I think we have like 7 guys on the roster still from the Gettleman era.
Right.
But we're getting there.
So,
I hope we're a couple of seasons away.
So we digressed. We talked about sports, but that's Nico Caridi. We
lost
some people. Caridi, Nico Caridi, Pact Abstract, Caridi Payne.
Yes. Caridi Payne and Associates. Law firm and Pack Abstract and Title Services.
Yes, so we want to thank everybody for watching again.
Thank you, guys.
You're going to have to stay tuned for the Sound Off with Sinkoff podcast coming to a podcast platform near you early 2024. But thanks so much for watching, everybody. For Nico, I'm Brian. You have a great day, and happy Hanukkah, and enjoy the snow.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.